Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled through the tight maintenance shaft of the cargo freighter Meridian's Hope. His hands shook as they always did when the ship was in danger. The reactor was failing again, and everyone was counting on him to fix it. Not because they trusted him, but because no one else wanted to squeeze into these cramped spaces. The ship had barely survived the pirate attack 2 hours ago. Marcus had listened to the screams over the comm system while he hid in the engine room, doing what he always did. Keeping the lights on. Staying out of the way. Being useful enough to keep around but invisible enough to ignore. He reached the damaged power coupling and began his repairs. His hands trembled as he connected the wires. Above him, through the metal floors, he could hear the crew arguing in the bridge. Their voices carried through the ventilation system. "We should surrender the cargo," Captain Vertex said. The Kryn warrior had 4 massive arms and armor-plated skin that could stop bullets. "They'll be back with more ships." "We can fight them," Bront rumbled. The security chief was a blob of transparent gel that could absorb energy weapons and spit them back at enemies. "I can handle their plasma rifles." "Not if they bring heavy weapons," Seal said. The navigator's telepathic abilities made her valuable, but even she sounded worried. "There are too many of them." Marcus finished the repair and crawled back toward the engine room. No one asked for his opinion. They never did. Humans were the newest species in the galactic community, and everyone knew they were the weakest. Slower than Kryn warriors. Less durable than Moluth gel beings. No telepathy like the Vraxi, no natural weapons or armor. Just fragile skin and bones that broke too easily. The ship shuddered as the pirate vessels appeared on the scanners again. Marcus pulled himself into the engine room and checked the readings. His mind immediately began calculating scenarios, running through possibilities like it always did. The other crew members called it anxiety. They said he worried too much, but Marcus saw patterns they didn't. He saw how systems could fail, how situations could go wrong, how everything could fall apart in seconds. He had a plan. It was dangerous, maybe stupid, but it could work. If he overloaded the reactor in a controlled burst, the electromagnetic pulse could disable the pirate ships long enough for the Meridian's Hope to escape. He had been running the calculations in his head since the first attack. Marcus opened the comm channel. "Captain, I have an idea." "Not now, Chun," Verthax snapped. "We're trying to figure out how to survive." "But if we use the reactor?" I said, "Not now." "Just keep the engines running." "That's your job?" Marcus closed the channel. His hands shook harder. The familiar weight pressed down on his chest. The voice in his head that said he wasn't good enough, wasn't strong enough, wasn't worth listening to. He had heard it so many times he almost believed it. The pirates began their boarding approach. Marcus watched through the security cameras as their ships latched onto the hull. Armed soldiers in combat armor poured through the airlocks. The crew of the Meridian's Hope met them with everything they had. Vorthax fought with all 4 arms, his chitin plates deflecting shots. Bront absorbed plasma bolts and fired them back. Seal coordinated their movements through her telepathic link. For a few minutes, it looked like they might win. Then the pirates brought out the heavy weapons. Verthax took a blast that cracked his armor and sent him flying. Bront's gelatinous body began to smoke as he absorbed too much energy too fast. Seal screamed as a psionic dampener shut down her telepathy. Marcus watched his crew fall one by one. These people who barely noticed him, who dismissed his ideas, who treated him like the weakest link in their chain. They were losing, and there was nothing they could do about it. Something changed inside Marcus. Not broke, changed, like a wire that had been wound too tight suddenly found the perfect tension. His hands stopped shaking. His breathing steadied. The calculations in his mind shifted from possibilities to plans. To actions, he locked the bridge crew out of the engineering systems. His fingers moved across the controls with absolute certainty. Every system on the ship responded to his touch. He knew this vessel better than anyone. Every pipe, every wire, every circuit. He had spent years learning it while everyone else focused on fighting and navigating and commanding. The reactor containment field began to fluctuate. Warning lights flashed across his console. Marcus adjusted the settings with precise movements. He was playing with forces that could vaporize the entire ship, but his calculations were perfect. He knew exactly what would happen. The pirates reached the engineering deck. Marcus heard them cutting through the door with plasma torches. They would be inside in less than a minute. He opened a ship-wide comm channel. His voice was calm, steady, nothing like the nervous mechanic everyone knew. You wanted the human to know his place? Let me show you what happens when we stop being afraid. The engineering door exploded inward. Pirate soldiers rushed through, weapons raised. They expected to find a cowering human engineer. Instead, they found someone who had stopped pretending to be small. Marcus pressed a button. The coolant systems engaged in patterns he had programmed. Pipes ruptured exactly where he planned. Supercooled liquid sprayed across the deck, flash freezing everything it touched. Pirates screamed as their armor locked up, their weapons froze. Their bodies went rigid. The gravity plates flickered in a rhythm Marcus had memorized. On, off, on, off. The timing disoriented the attackers, but Marcus moved through it like a dance he had practiced his whole life. On the bridge, Captain Verthax stared at the security feeds in disbelief. What is he doing? Seal, her telepathy slowly coming back online, reached out to touch Marcus's mind. She pulled back immediately, her eyes wide. He's not panicking. He's calculating everything, every move. How long has he been like this? Marcus's voice came over the intercom again, cold and precise. Captain Krath, you have 30 seconds to evacuate your boarding parties. After that, I'm igniting the cargo bay. Your ships are still docked. Do the math. Captain Krath of the pirate fleet stared at his communication screen. A human was threatening him. A human. The weakest species in known space. He started to laugh, then stopped when he saw the reactor readings his sensors were picking up from the Meridian's Hope. He's insane, Krath said to his first officer. He'll destroy his own ship. But something in the human's voice made Krath uncertain. It wasn't the voice of someone who had lost control. It was the voice of someone who had found it. 20-9 seconds. 28, 20-7. Marcus stood in the engine room, surrounded by unconscious and frozen pirates. The cargo bay was now filled with metamaterial particles suspended in the air. One spark and it would explode with enough force to cripple anything within 50 meters. The pirate ships were docked at 40 meters. He had known this would work. He had calculated the blast radius, the containment possibilities, the damage to both vessels. He had run the numbers 1,000 times in his head during his anxious nights lying awake, imagining every possible disaster. Now he was making one. Happen on purpose. 20 seconds, 19:18 on the bridge. Vorthax tried to override the engineering lockout. Every command was rejected. Marcus had changed all the access codes, rerouted all the command pathways. The captain of the ship no longer controlled his own vessel. Chun, stop this! Vorthax roared into the comm. That's an order. Marcus didn't respond. He was too busy sealing the emergency bulkheads around the cargo bay. He had reinforced them 3 weeks ago when he couldn't sleep, when his mind kept showing him scenarios where hull breaches killed everyone. The crew had laughed at him for wasting time on unnecessary repairs. Now, those repairs would save their lives in 15 seconds, 14, 30. Krath made his decision. All units evacuate now. Get off that ship. The pirates scrambled for their vessels, abandoning their wounded, dropping their weapons. They ran like they had never run before because they finally understood something. The human wasn't bluffing. He was going to do exactly what he said. 10 seconds. 9, 8. The last pirate cleared the airlock. Krath's ships began emergency separation procedures, but they were too slow. He knew it. Marcus knew it. Everyone knew it. 5 seconds. 4, 3. Marcus closed his eyes and pressed the ignition switch. The cargo bay erupted in a sphere of white-hot flame. The explosion was perfectly contained by the reinforced bulkheads, but the shockwave traveled through every surface, every connection point, every docking clamp. The pirate ship shuddered as the blast hit them. Systems overloaded. Power conduits exploded. Engines went dark. 3 of Krath's 5 vessels went completely dead in space. The other 2 barely maintained life support. Inside the Meridian's Hope, the crew felt only a strong vibration. The ship's systems flickered but held. Marcus had calculated everything perfectly. He opened the comm channel again. Captain Krath, your ships are disabled. You have limited life support and no weapons. I'm sure you'd like to repair that. Krath's face appeared on the screen, his reptilian features twisted with rage and fear. What do you want? Transfer emergency repair materials to us. Give us navigational data to the nearest Coalition outpost. Then leave. In exchange, I won't activate our distress beacon. Why not just call for help now? Marcus's expression didn't change. Because Coalition warships are 6 hours away. You could kill us all in 6 minutes if you got desperate. I ran those numbers while you were cutting through my door. Krath stared at the human for a long moment. He had underestimated this creature. They all had. Agreed. The transfer began immediately. Pirates who had been trying to kill the crew minutes ago now worked alongside them to move supplies and data. No one spoke. The tension was thick enough to cut. Verthax approached Marcus, who still hadn't left the engineering deck. Chun, you need to unlock the systems. Not yet, Marcus said. His hands were starting to shake again. Not until they're gone. You can't hold the ship hostage. I'm not holding it hostage. I'm keeping everyone alive. There's a difference. Seal stepped forward, her telepathic senses reaching out carefully. Marcus, let me help you. You're crashing. The adrenaline is wearing off. I'm fine. You're not fine. I can feel your mind from here. You've been running 1,000 calculations simultaneously for hours. You're burning out. Marcus gripped the edge of the console. She was right. The perfect clarity was starting to fade. The shaking was getting worse. Soon he would collapse, and then what? Would the crew go back to dismissing him? Would they forget what he had done? A young Vraxi engineer named Tess appeared at the door. She was the only crew member who had ever been kind to Marcus, who had asked him questions and listened to his answers. Marcus, please. We're safe now. You can rest. Marcus looked at her, then at the screen showing the pirate ships preparing to leave. He had won. Against all odds, using nothing but his mind and his knowledge of systems everyone else took for granted. He had saved the ship, he unlocked the engineering systems. Immediately, Verthax took back control of the vessel. Marcus slumped against the wall, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. The pirate ships disengaged and limped away into space. Krath's face appeared one last time on the communication screen. Human, what's your name? Marcus Chun. I'll remember it. The galaxy should know what you are. What am I? Krath's eyes showed something Marcus had never seen directed at him before. Respect. Dangerous. You're dangerous, Marcus Chun. Don't let anyone tell you different. The screen went dark. The Meridian's Hope turned toward the Coalition outpost, damaged but alive. Every person on board was breathing because of what Marcus had done. Verthax stood in the center of the bridge, looking at the engineering readouts. Seal stood beside him. Captain, I need to show you something. Look at the maintenance logs. She pulled up months of records. Small repairs that prevented disasters. System optimizations that improved efficiency. Safety upgrades done during Marcus's sleepless nights. Hundreds of things he had done that no one noticed because catastrophes that don't happen are invisible. He's been saving us this whole time, Seal whispered. While we called him weak and anxious and barely competent, he was holding this ship together. We never saw it because we never looked. Verthax's expression hardened. Not with anger, but with shame. Marcus sat in his small quarters staring at his hands. They were shaking again. The adrenaline was completely gone now, replaced by a crushing exhaustion that made his bones feel like lead. He had done the impossible, and all he wanted was to sleep for a week. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. He didn't answer, but the door opened anyway. Captain Verthax had to duck to fit through the human-sized doorway. His forearms hung awkwardly in the cramped space. I owe you an apology, Verthax said without preamble. I dismissed your plan. I've dismissed you for 3 years. I was wrong. Marcus didn't look up. You weren't wrong. I am weak. Compared to any of you, I'm fragile and slow and... Stop. Vorthax sat down on the floor, which was the only way he could fit in the room. Weak doesn't mean what I thought it meant. I can break steel with my bare hands, but I couldn't do what you did. None of us could. You would have found another way. No, we would have died. Vorthax leaned forward. Seal showed me the logs. All the repairs you've made. All the disasters you prevented that we never knew about. You've been protecting this ship since the day you came aboard. Marcus finally met the captain's eyes. Then why did everyone treat me like I was useless? Because we're idiots. Because we measured strength wrong. Because it's easier to trust armor and weapons than invisible calculations. Vorthax's expression softened. I'm sorry, Marcus, truly. It was the first time anyone had apologized to him for anything. Marcus felt something break inside his chest, but in a different way than before. Like a weight lifting instead of crashing down. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now we reach the Coalition outpost. We report what happened. And I formally recommend you for promotion to Chief Engineer with full authority over ship operations. Marcus laughed, but it came out bitter. So you can use me again? Point me at problems like a weapon? No, so you never have to ask permission to save our lives? Vorthax stood up, his head brushing the ceiling. You earned respect, Marcus. Real respect. Don't let anyone take it from you again. Not even yourself. After the captain left, Marcus lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept running through scenarios, calculating what could have gone wrong, what still might go wrong. The anxiety hadn't disappeared. It had just been focused for a few hours. He wondered if he would ever stop feeling like this. Like a spring wound too tight. Like one wrong move would break him. 3 days later, the Meridian's Hope limped into Coalition Outpost 17. The damage was extensive but manageable. Repair crews swarmed the vessel immediately, and the crew was given quarters while work was completed. Marcus spent most of his time in the station's observation deck, watching ships come and go. He felt disconnected from everything, like he was watching his life from outside his body. The other crew members tried to talk to him, but he didn't know what to say. How do you explain that you don't feel like a hero? That you just did what needed to be done because no one else would? Tess found him there on the second evening. The young Vraxi sat beside him without speaking, just sharing the silence. Finally, she said, I want to learn from you. Marcus glanced at her. Learn what? How to be terrified all the time. How to turn fear into preparation. How to see what others miss. How to be strong in ways that don't look like strength. She smiled. You saved my life when that pirate took me hostage. The captain couldn't. Bronk couldn't. But you did. Because you saw an angle they didn't. I just dropped a bulkhead at the right time. You calculated the exact millisecond when that pirate would fire and where. That's not just anything. That's incredible. Marcus wanted to dismiss it, to downplay what he had done, but he stopped himself. Maybe it was time to stop making himself smaller. Maybe Krath was right. Maybe he was dangerous, and maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Okay, he said. I'll teach you. The next morning, a Coalition intelligence officer arrived at the outpost. Her name was Captain Yara Okonkwo, and she was human. Marcus stared at her in surprise. He had never met another human in the outer reaches. Mr. Chun, she said, shaking his hand firmly, I need to speak with you, privately. They went to a secure meeting room. Yara pulled up holographic displays showing sensor logs, damage reports, and tactical analyses of the pirate engagement. She studied them with the focused intensity of a predator examining prey. What you accomplished is remarkable, she said. 6 hours of sustained tactical calculation. Perfect execution under extreme pressure. 0 friendly casualties. This is what we train special operations teams for months to achieve. I just did what needed to be done. No, you did what no one else could do. Yara leaned forward. Coalition intelligence is forming a new division. Non-combat specialists who can protect civilians when military forces can't respond in time. We need people who think like you. People who can turn everyday systems into defensive weapons. People who see the angles everyone else misses. Marcus felt his chest tighten. You want to turn me into a weapon. I want to give you the resources and authority to do what you did on the Meridian's Hope, but for entire colonies. Space stations. Trade routes. Places where people like you are the only hope. It was validation he had dreamed about his whole life. Recognition that he was valuable, important, needed. But something about it felt wrong. Like he would be trading one cage for another. I need to think about it, Marcus said. Of course. But think fast. The galaxy is dangerous and weak doesn't mean helpless anymore. Not after what you showed us? After Yara left, Marcus returned to the Meridian's Hope. The repairs were nearly complete. The crew was preparing to depart. Vorthax called everyone to the bridge for an announcement. I've been offered a new posting, the captain said. A larger vessel with better pay. I'm turning it down? The crew murmured in surprise. Vorthax continued, I'm staying with the Meridian's Hope because I've learned something important. A crew isn't strong because of individual abilities. It's strong because each person sees what others can't. I forgot that. I won't forget again. He looked directly at Marcus. I want you to stay as chief engineer. Not because we need someone to fix things, because we need someone to see the disasters before they happen. To think 10 steps ahead? To be the person who saves us when strength and speed and telepathy aren't enough. Marcus felt every eye on him. The old Marcus would have accepted immediately, grateful for any scrap of approval. But he wasn't the old Marcus anymore. I'll stay on one condition, name it. I want full authority to implement safety measures without approval. I want to train apprentices. And I want everyone to stop treating humans like we're weak. We're different. Different isn't weak. Vorthax smiled, showing teeth. Agreed. 6 months passed. The Meridian's Hope ran smoother than it ever had. Marcus's apprentices, including Tess, learned to see systems the way he did. To calculate failure points. To prepare for disasters that might never happen. The crew no longer dismissed suggestions from the engineering department. They had learned what happened when they ignored the quiet voice in the corner. Marcus still worked with Coalition Intelligence as a consultant. Once a month, he traveled to training facilities to teach their new division. He showed them how to think like him, how to weaponize the mundane, how to survive when you're the weakest person in the room, but the Meridian's Hope was home. These people had learned to see him clearly, and he had learned to see himself clearly too. The anxiety hadn't disappeared. His hands still shook sometimes. His mind still ran through disaster scenarios. But now he understood that wasn't a weakness. It was a survival mechanism. A tool he could control instead of something that controlled him. Then came the distress call. The Meridian's Hope was transporting medical supplies to a remote colony when they picked up an emergency signal. A passenger liner called the Star of Providence was caught in a spatial anomaly. The anomaly was expanding, pulling the ship deeper into unstable space where the laws of physics stopped making sense. 300 passengers on board. Life support failing. No military vessels within range. How long until they're pulled past the point of no return? Vorthax asked. Seal checked the data. 4 hours. Maybe 5? Can we reach them in time? Yes, but we don't have the equipment to extract a ship that size from an anomaly. We'd need a full salvage team. Everyone looked at Marcus. He was already running calculations in his head, his fingers moving through holographic displays. Gravitational forces, structural stress points, energy requirements. The numbers flowed through his mind like water. We can do it, Marcus said quietly. How? Bront rumbled. We're a cargo freighter, not a rescue vessel. We don't need to be. The anomaly is creating unstable gravity fluctuations. If we generate a counterpulse at the right frequency, we can disrupt the field long enough for them to escape. With what? We don't have that kind of equipment. Marcus smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who saw an angle no one else did. We do. We just need to overload our reactor core in a controlled sequence. The electromagnetic pulse will serve as our counter frequency. Vorthax went rigid. You want to deliberately overload the reactor again? It worked with the pirates. That nearly destroyed us. No, Marcus pulled up the data from that fight. It had a 94% success probability. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. This has an 87% chance of working. And a 13% chance of killing us all, Seal said softly. Marcus met her eyes. Yes, but there's a 100% chance those 300 people die if we don't try. You taught me that different doesn't mean weak. Let me show you that weak doesn't mean useless. The crew exchanged looks. Finally, Vorthax nodded. Do it. But I'm trusting you, Marcus. Don't make me regret that. I won't. The Meridian's Hope changed course, heading directly toward the spatial anomaly. Marcus worked in engineering, reconfiguring the reactor with his apprentices. Tess watched his hands move across the controls with absolute certainty. You're not shaking, she observed. I shake when I'm afraid of failing. Right now, failure isn't an option, so there's nothing to be afraid of. That doesn't make sense. Welcome to being human. We don't make sense. That's our strength. They reached the anomaly with 3 hours to spare. The Star of Providence hung in space like a fish caught in a net, half of its hull already distorted by the impossible physics of the unstable region. Marcus could see the fear on the faces through the view screens. People who knew they were going to die. Not today, he thought. Not if I can help it. He began the reactor sequence. The containment field started fluctuating in precisely calculated patterns. The ship's system screamed warnings, but Marcus ignored them. He knew exactly what the reactor could handle because he had spent years calculating its limits. Marcus, the field is destabilizing, Tess said, her voice tight. It's supposed to. Trust the math. The math says we should be dead. The math says we should be fine. You're reading the standard tolerances. I'm using the actual tolerances. Marcus adjusted another setting. Standard tolerances include safety margins. We don't need safety margins right now. We need every ounce of power. The reactor built toward critical. Energy readings went into the red. The ship shuddered as forces that could vaporize them built inside the core. Marcus counted down in his head, watching 3 different displays at once. Making micro-adjustments every few seconds on the bridge, Vorthax gripped his command chair. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. Keep telling yourself that. I can hear you, Marcus said over the comm. And yes, I do. At exactly the right moment, Marcus released the energy pulse. The reactor discharged a massive electromagnetic wave directly into the spatial anomaly. The unstable gravity field shuddered, wavered, and collapsed. The Star of Providence lurched forward, suddenly free. Its engines engaged, pulling it away from the danger zone. 300 people who had been seconds from death now had a chance, but the Meridian's hope paid the price. The reactor, pushed beyond its limits, began shutting down. Emergency systems engaged. Power dropped to minimum. The ship went dark except for emergency lighting. Marcus slumped over his console, exhausted. Tess caught him before he fell. We did it? Yeah, Marcus whispered. We did. The Star of Providence sent a communication. The captain's face appeared on the screen, tears streaming down her face. You saved us. How can we ever thank you? Vorthax smiled. Thank our chief engineer. He's the one who made it happen. Hours later, both ships limped toward the nearest station. The Meridian's Hope was running on backup power, but everyone was alive. The Star of Providence's passengers crowded their view screens, waving and cheering at the cargo freighter that had saved them. Marcus watched from the observation window. Tess stood beside him. You're not afraid anymore, are you? I'm always afraid. But I learned something important. Fear means you understand the danger. Fear means you're smart enough to be careful. Fear means you'll see the problem before someone else gets hurt. So fear is good? Fear is a tool, like anything else. Use it wrong and it destroys you. Use it right and it saves lives? Marcus looked at his apprentice. You asked me to teach you. That's the most important lesson. Don't fight what you are. Learn what you are, then become it completely. Tess smiled. I understand. Good, because tomorrow we start training on advanced reactor management. If we're going to keep doing insane things like this, you need to know exactly what insane looks like. You mean we're going to do this again? Marcus grinned. It was real this time, not forced. Someone has to. Might as well be us. The story of the Meridian's hope spread through the galaxy faster than light-speed travel. A human engineer who turned a cargo freighter into a rescue vessel, who defeated pirates with nothing but system knowledge, who saved 300 lives with calculations instead of weapons. Marcus Chen became a name people knew. Not everyone was happy about it. Kryn Admiral named Thorax contacted the ship 3 weeks after the rescue. His face filled the screen, his expression hard. I want to speak with Marcus Chun. Marcus appeared on the bridge, wiping grease from his hands. That's me. You're making my species look weak, Thorax said bluntly. We are warriors. We have strength and honor. But everyone talks about the human who does impossible things with reactors and calculations. Marcus stared at him. The old Marcus would have apologized, would have made himself small. The new Marcus just raised an eyebrow. Your point? My point is that strength should matter. Physical power should matter. But you've shown that brains can beat muscle, and now young Kryn are questioning whether they should be warriors at all. Good, Marcus said. Maybe they should question it. Maybe we all should. Thorax's face darkened. You disrespect our culture. No, I'm showing that there are different kinds of strength. Your warriors are incredible, but they're not the only answer to every problem. The galaxy is big enough for all of us to be valuable. For a long moment, Thorax said nothing. Then his expression shifted slightly. You really believe that? I have to believe it. Because if strength is only about who can hit harder, then humans lose every time. We're the weakest species physically, but we're still here. That should tell you something. Thorax actually smiled. It tells me that weakness is more dangerous than I thought. He cut the connection. Verthax shook his head. You just lectured an admiral. Someone needed to. Marcus went back to engineering, leaving the bridge crew staring after him. But not everyone was offended. Within a month, 3 human engineers from other ships requested transfers to the Meridian's Hope. They wanted to learn from Marcus, to understand how he thought, to become dangerous in the same way. Coalition intelligence also increased their offers. Captain Yara returned with a more formal proposal. We want you to head the entire division. Full authority. Unlimited resources. You'd be training hundreds of people to think like you. Marcus considered it seriously this time. What would that mean for the Meridian's Hope? You'd have to leave. This is a full-time position at Coalition headquarters. Then no. Yara blinked. You're turning down one of the most powerful positions in Coalition intelligence? I'm turning down a desk job. I learned something important, Captain. I'm good at what I do because I understand ships. Real ships. Real systems. Real problems. Take me away from that, and I'm just another administrator. I'll keep consulting. I'll keep training your people. But I'm staying where I do the most good. You could save more people from headquarters. Maybe, or maybe I'd lose touch with what makes this work. I'm not willing to risk that. Marcus smiled. Besides, my crew needs me. After Yara left, disappointed but respectful, Marcus returned to find his engineering bay full. All 3 new human engineers stood waiting, along with Tess and 2 other apprentices from different species. They looked at him expectantly. What? Marcus asked. Teach us, one of the humans said. Her name was Sarah Kim, and she had been an engineer on a mining station. Teach us how to be what you are. Marcus looked at all of them. Different species. Different backgrounds. Different strengths and weaknesses. But all of them wanted to learn how to survive in a galaxy where they weren't the strongest or fastest or most powerful. Okay, Marcus said. Lesson 1. Stop thinking about what you can't do. Start thinking about what you can do that no one else can. Every species has advantages. Kryn have strength. Vraxi have telepathy. Maluth have energy absorption. Humans have something different. What? Tess asked. Adaptability. We don't have natural weapons, so we learn to use everything as a weapon. We don't have armor, so we learn to avoid getting hit. We don't have telepathy, so we learn to read people through behavior. We're weak in every category, so we learn to be strong in all of them combined. Sarah nodded slowly. We don't specialize. We generalize? Exactly. And in a galaxy full of specialists, generalists see connections others miss. They see solutions that require combining different approaches. They see possibilities that don't exist if you only think one way. Marcus pulled up a schematic of the ship. This ship has 17 major systems. Most engineers specialize in one or two. I know all 17. Not because I'm smarter, but because I had to be. No one was going to cut me slack for being weak, so I made sure I was never weak in knowledge. He looked at each of them. That's what I'm going to teach you. Not how to be human. How to be someone who turns disadvantages into advantages. How to be someone who wins fights without throwing a punch. How to be dangerous in ways that don't look dangerous until it's too late. Over the next few months, Marcus built a reputation as the most demanding teacher in the fleet. His students learned every system on the ship. They learned to calculate stress points and failure probabilities in their heads. They learned to see 6 moves ahead like chess players. They learned to turn their anxiety into preparation and their fear into focus. The Meridians. Hope became known as the ship you didn't want to fight and the ship you desperately wanted to rescue you. Other captains started requesting Marcus's apprentices for their own vessels. The galaxy was changing, slowly, as people realized that strength came in many forms. 1 year after the pirate incident, the Meridians' hope responded to another crisis. A colony station was under attack by raiders. Military response was hours away. The station would fall in minutes. Marcus looked at his team. All of them were ready. All of them knew what to do. He didn't need to calculate the odds anymore because he knew they would find a way. All right, he said. Let's show them what weak really means. The Meridians' hope engaged. Not with weapons, not with shields. With engineering. With calculations. With the kind of thinking that turned a cargo freighter into the most dangerous ship in the sector, they won. Of course they won. Afterward, as the crew celebrated, Marcus stood in the observation deck watching the stars. Tess found him there, as she often did. She had graduated from apprentice to full engineer now, but she still sought his advice. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Staying with us instead of taking that big position? Marcus shook his head. Never. This is where I belong. With people who see me clearly. With people I can trust. With people who understand that we're all weak in some way, and that's okay. You're not weak anymore. I'm still weak. I'll always be weak compared to warriors and telepaths and energy beings. But I learned something important. Weakness is just potential strength waiting for the right moment. Marcus smiled. The galaxy called me the weakest link. They were right. I was. But they forgot something important about chains. What's that? When you put enough pressure on the weakest link, it doesn't break. It adapts, it becomes steel, and then it holds stronger than any other link in the chain could. Marcus turned to face her. That's what humans are. We're the weakest link that snapped. Not broke. Snapped into focus. Into purpose. Into something the galaxy wasn't ready for. Tess smiled. I'm glad you snapped. Me too. Years later, there would be stories about Marcus Chun. Some would be true. Most would be exaggerated. But all of them would carry the same message. Don't underestimate the quiet ones. Don't dismiss the anxious ones. Don't assume weakness means helpless, because sometimes the weakest link is the strongest one. You just have to know how to look. Marcus never became famous in the way warriors became famous. He never commanded fleets or won medals or had statues built in his honor. But every engineer in the fleet knew his name. Every person who survived because of calculated thinking instead of brute force knew what he represented. He represented the idea that you don't have to be the strongest to be strong. That fear can be a tool instead of a prison. That anxiety can be preparation instead of weakness. That being human with all its fragility and uncertainty wasn't a disadvantage. It was a superpower waiting to be understood. Marcus Tune continued working on the Meridian's Hope until he retired at 60. By then, he had trained over 200 engineers, had saved thousands of lives, had changed how the galaxy thought about strength and weakness. His last log entry on the ship was simple. Day 12,847, all systems optimal. Crew performance excellent. Personal status, no longer afraid of being afraid. The chain held. It always does when you know where to apply pressure. Marcus Chung signing off. And somewhere in the galaxy, a young human engineer read those words and thought, if he could do it, so can I. The weakest link had snapped, but it hadn't broken. It had become exactly what the galaxy needed, a reminder that weakness is just strength that hasn't found its purpose yet.